about 100 million women in India are missing. Where are they? This is an attempt to find an answer to this question by applying the research of Professor Amartya, who got the Nobel Prize in Economics. Now, contrary to the popular belief, women do not make up majority of world population. The opposite belief, which is mistaken, is based on generalizing from the contemporary situation in Europe and North America, where the ratio of men to women is 1.05 or higher. However, in South Asia, West Asia and China, the ratio can be as low as 0.94 or even lower. However, considerable research has shown that if men and women receive similar attention, women tend to live noticeably longer than men. Then what is the reason for the lower ratio of women to men? The situation in India is also fairly opposite to what it should be. The death rate is higher for women than for men fairly consistently in all age groups until the late 30s. Similar situation exists in most of Asia, North Africa and even Latin America to some extent. Now, first let us look at the concept of sex ratio. Sex ratio is the number of females for every 1000 males. Now, a lot of people take the benchmark sex ratio to be 1000 and compare the sex ratio of every country based on that benchmark. However, Professor Amartya believed that there is absolutely no reason for believing that the probability of living for males and females should be absolutely equal, and so 1000 should be the benchmark sex ratio. Professor Amartya, on the other hand, argued for having an empirical sex ratio as the benchmark sex ratio, which is based on the sex ratio in the developed world, where there is no neglect of basic care for girls as against in developing world. So, on an average, in the developed world, 1050 is the sex ratio. So, we consider that to be the benchmark sex ratio. So, the number of missing women in India can be calculated as follows. 933 is the sex ratio of India according to the latest census. Therefore, from this simple calculation, we can see that about 100 million women in India are missing. This is the graph, which is of course alarming because it shows a steady decline with small ups and downs here and there in the sex ratio of women, and even steeper decline, especially lately, in the number of in the sex ratio of women with from age 0 to 6. Now, alarming as this is, this also proves that the problem of low sex ratios is fairly complicated and cannot be simply dealt with by one universal solution like education or curbing female feticide and so on, because as can be seen that although the number of women in age 0 to 6 is declining steadily, the number of women, the total number of women has increased lately. So this calls for a much more detailed investigation into this problem, which we will be doing in this excursion. So this is the latest census data. So the total number of the total sex ratio in India is 933. That in rural areas is 946, and in urban areas it is 900, which is again a bit surprising, because urban areas are expected to be more advanced and more progressive. However, this may also be the result of migration of only male members of the family to urban areas. So not much can be read into this data, but what is clear is that the problem is very complex and cannot be dealt with by generalizing it with one solution. So the problem of missing women in India is thus a very complex problem. Now, surprisingly, economic growth is a minor factor in this. So Punjab and Haryana, which are among the richest and most economically advanced Indian states, have very low, indeed one of the lowest sex ratios in India, which is it is around 860 for every 1000 men. In contrast to the much poorer state of Kerala, where the ratio is greater than 1030. Furthermore, there has been a steady decline in the sex ratio in India from more than 970 in 1901 to 930 women for every 1000 men in 1971, while economy progressed. This is clear from this graph. Till 1971, from 1901, the sex ratio has almost steadily declined, apart from a few bumps here and there. Furthermore, sexual discrimination is a minor factor too. A sexist society isn't the primary reason for low sex ratios, unlike what was hitherto believed. Indeed, accepting women in positions of power happened in India much more and much earlier than in Western countries. This wouldn't have happened if we had a very rigid sexist society. Only 2% of US senators are women, but Rajya Sabha in India is more than 10% women. So what is the biggest factor affecting all this? As it turns out, relative empowerment of women as compared to men is the biggest factor affecting all this. Note the words, relative empowerment of women as compared to men. This is the reason for astonishing instances of sex ratio falling with economic growth. So, what is the level at which empowerment should occur? As it turns out, what matters most is relative empowerment at the family level and not at the society level. So, for example, if what I mean by this is that if women in society are made fun of and not respected, this doesn't play as much role into lowering sex ratios as empowerment at the family level. Now what happens at the family level is that based on how empowered they are, every family implicitly allocates resources to its members. There is no explicit discussion for the allocation, and it happens implicitly, but it completely depends on empowerment of the individual. So for example, if a new commodity is purchased, the entire family will implicitly decide to allow the most empowered person to have the most control over it, the largest control over it, and as the empowerment goes on lessening, the control also goes on lessening automatically. Even the less empowered individual would definitely accept this. That is why the keyword is implicit. Now what is the equation for empowerment? The desire for resources of any family member is directly proportional to empowerment. Allocation of resources by the family is also directly proportional to the empowerment. Now this results in equilibrium where every family member thinks he/she deserves only what he/she is getting. So even if women get a lesser share, they believe that they deserve only that much because they are only that much empowered. So this is also very clearly seen throughout India. So those of us who are Indian here will empathize with this. A lot of the times women in our homes neglect their precarious health conditions, but try to take immediate care of precarious health conditions of seemingly more empowered members of the family, for example the patriarch and so on. The women themselves also deliberately neglect their health, and this is why again I say that this results in equilibrium, where every family member thinks he/she deserves only what he/she is getting. Now, how can women be empowered at a family level to fight off this evil and to find the 100 million missing women? So they can earn an outside income. Their work is recognized as productive. Now this is easier to achieve with work done outside the home, because unfortunately work done in home is automatically considered as unproductive. They own some economic resources and have some rights to fall back on. Finally, there is a clear-headed understanding of the ways in which women are deprived and a recognition of the possibilities of changing this situation. Now this is what we at Get Up for Change are doing through this lecture. We want to develop a clear-headed understanding of this evil. Now, unfortunately, whatever has happened to alleviate this problem of sex ratios is education and political empowerment. Now, this education and political empowerment only primarily affects the fourth point, that is this point. Other 3 points have been neglected, which as it turns out are much more important than the fourth point. So insufficient efforts have been put for the first 3 points. Now what affects the relative empowerment of women in a family scenario the most? Not unsurprisingly, considerable empirical evidence suggests that productive employment, that is working outside the home for a wage or in farm and so on, so I should say seemingly productive employment as opposed to unpaid housework, is the single most important factor. So the larger the number of employed women, the larger the number of empowered women. So we all should think about this in depth over what steps do we need to take to empower women in India. So why does this happen? There are very clear logical reasons for this. The social respect that is associated with being a breadwinner and a productive contributor to the family's joint prosperity empowers women. This implicitly results in desire for more resources by the woman and allocation of more resources by the family. So if the woman is also one of the breadwinners, she will definitely take better care of herself and desire better care of herself, and the family would also be happy in giving her that better care. Working outside the home also provides experience of the outside world, and this can be important in improving women's position within the family, thus empowering her to desire for and get more resources. Now, having working women has some more benefits too. Such empowerment will not only change the deal that the working women implicitly get in a family, it will also change something else. if the status of women does in general rise and women's contribution become more recognized, female children also may receive more attention. The exposure of women to the world through work outside home can also weaken, through its educational effect, the hold of traditional beliefs and behavior, which would again reduce the relatively less important factors like female feticide and so on. Now there is also strong correlation in ranking of communities throughout the world when we rank them in according to proportion of women that are productively employed in them and the ratio of life expectancy of females to that of males. So from top to bottom, at the top we have largest proportion of women who are engaged in productive employment. Again from top to bottom here, at the top we have the largest life expectancy of females to that of males. Now as will be seen that there is a strong correlation between this, in that the top 3 communities are exactly in the same order, the last community is in reversed order. Evidence of similar relation and similar correlation is also found in other comparisons. For example, Punjab, the richest Indian state, has the lowest ratio of women to men in India, that is 0.86. It also has the lowest ratio of women in productive employment compared to men. The influence of outside employment of women's well-being has also been documented in a number of other studies of specific communities in different parts of the world, not only in India. While concluding, Amartya Sen also pointed out that of course working women and employment of women, although was the single most important factor, was definitely not the only factor. So women's education and women's economic rights, including property rights, which means allowing women to own and inherit property, which has recently come up in India, fortunately. These things also hold significant importance, but of course not as much as allowing women to work. So this is the conclusion. The problem of 100 million missing Indian women is clearly one of the most momentous and neglected problem facing us today. The here is incorrect. So this is definitely a big problem because we are almost killing 100 million women before they deserve death. As a part of conclusion to this lecture, let us all pledge that we will stand up for allowing women in our homes to go to work, which is not happening in lots of homes in India even now. Thanks for watching. I hope you will apply this research in practice. Thank you.